Honestly, I've only recently gotten into Hollow Knight, so I can't understand the pain that the original fans are going through when waiting for Silksong. But hey, I've experienced waiting for a long time with a game with the Deltarune chapter, so I guess I can say some things. So for people who don't know, Silksong is the awaited sequel of the very popular game Hollow Knight, and it's been announced quite a while ago. Hell, it's been so long someone has made an update account on Silksong News, and someone else even made an update account on that update account. And not to mention some loners and losers doing challenges until they get a girlfriend. I feel like they're going mad over there. So with the intended release date of Silksong being around early 2023, but it now being pushed back to an unknown date, some people have begun to wonder if Silksong is really in the feared development hell. What's development hell? Pick up Bloom. Well, in the context of game development hell refers to the extended phases that a video game may go through during its production cycle, usually the game being delayed multiple times or just taking a longer time compared to other games, aka it's a term that needs use when they have to wait for entertainment. There are multiple factors that can cause this development hell for games, like technical challenges, quality assurance issues, creative differences, lovers' affairs or something, but there's also something called feature creep. Feature creep occurs when new features are continually added to the game without proper consideration of the impact on the development timeline. This can lead to a cycle of things getting added while having a blind spot for the fact this is all gonna have to be polished later on. Team Cherry actually admitted the Silksong project, originally called the Hornet DLC, turned out to be a lot bigger than anticipated. The fact that Team Cherry wants to add more ideas to their game can be explained by the fact that Team Cherry now has a lot more budget compared to when they originally developed Hollow Knight. Even with their budget, when developing Hollow Knight, they still managed to add a ton of features and areas, although they did have to do some hard budgeting around the end of the development. But with the money for Silksong, Team Cherry can have a lot more creative freedom. However, during an interview, Matthew Griffin admitted that they indeed keep adding a ton of ideas, which seems to be the problem.
I mean, I get on a call with them periodically, like most of the time it's just so everyone can update what they've been doing. But then they'll still just start going crazy, like going off on an idea. And I'm like, wow, I mean, I love hearing it because that's the fun part of the creative process. But It's also kind of like, we haven't figured that out yet, or are we just gonna keep adding stuff? You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when a game that was originally planned to be small grows rapidly, it could get a snowball effect, eventually slowing down development time. But then there's the question, is delaying a game or slowing down development time to add more detail really that bad? Development hell has happened so many times now to so many games that you have to wonder if it's really that negative as people make it out to be. I mean, there are so many examples of games that took a long time to develop that I'm gonna pick a few little to do a retrospect on, especially on indie games, since those are better to compare to Team Cherry, and eventually make a point about how longer development time could affect Silksong by comparing it to these games. And while you're here, I'll do a shameless plug and ask if you can subscribe. It would mean a lot to me and it helps me motivate me to make more videos, so thank you. So I'm gonna start off with a strong one, also an indie game, OMORI. Honestly, I think most people that played OMORI have forgotten about the fact that it was in development for a really long time. If you don't know what OMORI is, in short, it's this RPG game where you play as Omori, his name being taken from hikikomori, the Japanese term for someone who's a shut-in, and doesn't take part in society. In the game, you get to experience a colorful environment and headspace, and also get to play in real-life environments. OMORI's Kickstarter launched in 2014, which means it was in development for 6 years. And the fact that it took so long is weird, considering the game went far and beyond the original Kickstarter goal. I guess one reason is that OMOCAT was very inexperienced with game developing, considering they only posted webcomics before this. The original Kickstarter goal was supposed to be $22,000, but ended up with a whopping $203,000. They most likely got this much because the art style was unique and it has this edgy flair to it, which the internet loves. They smashed every one of their goals, except for a PS Vita port, but I'm pretty sure a PS Vita port wouldn't have gotten far, considering the PS Vita market is completely overshadowed by the hit game My Name is Mayo. In the end, almost 6,000 people had backed OMORI and had put their trust into the game. And at first, communication between developer OMOCAT and their backers had gone quite well, but after a while, updates started to die down, and backers began to get more and more frustrated by these lack of updates, even going as far as accusing the development team of taking the money of backers and running away with it. Keep in mind, the original plan was that the game would be out in 1 year, which is quite ambitious, and after a long time, a release date was posted but then got delayed again. This was around around 2019 or 2020 if I remember correctly. Keyword remember, because OMOCAT wiped all YouTube development logs for some reason. The developers kept saying that the game needed to be polished out and tested more, which is fair, but the response back from fans was also very valid. I mean, the game gathered up a lot of hype, especially because they got such a big budget to work with. But after the lack of updates and the speculation that the game was a whole scam, people slowly started to speak only negatively about the game. This did not help with OMOCAT's image, but we'll get back to their image in about a second. When it did finally come out in 2020 after all this time, the reviews were mixed.
Like literally, if it wasn't for the real world and that great ending, I would have been fairly disappointed.
OMORI was one of the most memorable artistic experiences I've ever had the pleasure of indulging in.
But even so, people did enjoy the game, of course, mostly because of the story. You see, the gameplay was very Earthbound-like and lacked some originality. When I played the game myself, I have to admit it was actually pretty boring at some times. The grinding methods to be able to defeat bosses being very slow and also a bit of luck-based combat. However, the story is what got most people hooked, including me. So people started praising its sad storyline and how it handles trauma. And with the praise, people seem to forget about OMOCAT's controversies for like 2 years, I think. So remember what I said about their image? Well, turns out OMOCAT is a little boy kisser. Yep, they got outed for their old tweets about Shotogun. Yikes. People have said that they have apologized for it and it was a long time ago, but I felt like I should mention it anyways. But the Shota stuff, that is pretty much common knowledge if you're chronically online like me. What I have not seen people talking about at all though is how certain backers of OMORI never got their promised goods. There are actually several comments on OMORI's Kickstarter mentioning that they never got their stuff. Bad at keeping promises, huh, OMOCAT? Anyways, I got a little off track here, but I think the reason development hell for OMORI started is because complete lack of experience mixed with being too ambitious. I mean, the game is kinda big, so it could be that OMORI indeed did suffer from adding too much before realizing, oh shit, we have to polish this syndrome. It's real, by the way, and you should be scared. The ending had a far higher quality compared to the rest of the game, which makes me think they could have skipped a whole lot of development time if they made the game a little bit shorter. By making the game shorter, they could have focused on making the rest of the game more of a higher quality, cause a lot of the long boring stuff was not important to the story or lore, which makes it feels like filler content. So, if we compare this to Silksong, I don't think they are very similar, luckily. I mean, Team Cherry did do a Kickstarter like OMORI, but only for Hollow Knight. And instead of taking almost $250,000 and making a combat system which was similar to already existing games, they delivered on their promises and budgeted better. The only comparison that you could make between Team Cherry and OMOCAT is the lack of updates. For OMOCAT, it could have been laziness, but as far as I'm aware, they never gave a valid reason. But for Team Cherry, it could be because they might not want to interact with the god-awful internet while working hard on the game. Also for Team Cherry, updates actually take a lot of time according to their playtester Greg. They choose to collect art and carefully pick out what words to use apparently. Greg also mentioned that the game should have been out a while ago, but that Team Cherry keeps making it better. We're just gonna have to hope he's right. I think a lesson you can learn from OMORI is that it's important to have experience and work on certain projects to see how good you are at something before deciding to go instantly start a Kickstarter, which has money. People's money. Team Cherry has had lots of experience before working on Hollow Knight and Silksong, so experience is not an issue, but OMORI also had the problem of adding way too much filler into their game that did not feel interesting or felt like it was helping the world building. So I hope that all that extra content that Team Cherry adds into Silksong won't feel unnecessary. Next game. You know, I just have to get this out of the way. The one and only feared Yandere Simulator. Now, I feel like if you're watching this video, I think you know what Yandere Simulator is and who Yandere Dev is, also known as the jealous guy.
I, Ever X, humbly submit a toast.
Yandere Dev posted on 4chan where he pitched the idea that he'd like to develop a game where you play as a yandere, someone who is so much in love with someone that it turns into an obsession, and the person that is obsessed then starts to kill others who get in the way of being with their loved one. 4chan loved the idea that Yandere Dev had, so he started development at around 2014, his first mistake being trusting 4chan for advice. His channel started off small but eventually grew after big YouTubers like Markiplier made let's plays of the game. All seemed whimsical and fun, if you look past the Twitch ban that the game got. And then around 2017, people started wondering how this development was going, and Yandere Dev decided to upload a video talking about his issues with development. Props to that guy for communicating his problems and being clear with his fans. Now, what was his main issue that hindered development, might you ask? Did he start adding too much? Was it his code? Nope, it was emails. He said that emails about the game hindered his development too much, apparently. He also decided to make this character, Midori, story that was made to be like his quote annoying fans. I'm serious. He decided to make a character to make fun of his fans that were asking him questions. He then proceeded to kill that character a bunch of times, even though his fans were just trying to support him and were curious on how game development was going. However, blaming game development time on fans writing emails is incredibly stupid in my opinion. He could have just hired someone who could take care of responding to the emails or just not respond at all, you know? People also began to notice how bad Yandere Dev's code actually was. I mean, the game was laggy and just looked badly unpolished as well. So eventually Yandere Dev decided to team up with Tiny Build Studio. Tiny Build was supposed to help Yandere Dev with his code, imported to a newer version of Unity. However, when the people that were going to do that saw the code, they were just surprised of how much of a spaghetti mess it was. This was the actual reason why the coding took so long. Yandere Dev did not know how to make his code efficient enough. Now, I only did some coding in high school, so I'm not that experienced, but even I know this image is just fucked up. So when Tiny Build fixed some of the code, Yandere Dev just couldn't read it. He's used to coding spaghetti mess after all. So after some conflict, Tiny Build and Yandere Dev decided to not work together anymore after only being partnered for like 9 months. But things only went downhill from here. Yandere Dev began responding very rudely to people, which in return meant that more trolls were coming to harass him. So much so that people began documenting speedruns of getting banned from his server. Yandere Dev was sure as hell aware of the people trying to troll him, but instead of taking a time back from the internet to focus on bettering himself or his code, he just kept on getting angry and angrier. He also just straight up stole some Unity assets, if I remember correctly. But the straw that broke the camel's back was for sure the grooming allegations against Yandere Dev. I will not go into too much detail because it's a serious issue and I'm not educated deeply enough in it, but in late 2023, evidence that suggested that Yandere Dev groomed young girls was brought to light. The grooming ranged from Discord messages to calls, and it's honestly disgusting. Because of the grooming allegations, several of the game's developers and voice actors, including the main character's voice actress, left the project. Yandere Dev did make a blog post addressing it and admitting that the allegations were correct. In his more recent blog post, Yandere Dev said he would make sure that Yandere Simulator's development would be paused, or at least less important to him than the lifestyle changes he was going to make, like therapy and such. But all in all, the game hasn't been released for over 9 years, and I don't think it ever will. The game still looks choppy and bland. It's just bad, but it makes sense considering if you code in spaghetti language, it will take like 10 times longer to code, so it's just stuck at its ugly face. The most important issue this game and its development has, it's just that his developer has too big of an ego. He refused any help to fix the code and turned his attention to trolls and fans way too much, so it's pretty safe to say this form of development hell is totally not the case for Silksong. The developers of Team Cherry again like to stay away from the internet when developing, and they sure as hell don't respond to the Discord messages from fans as far as I know, and this case is probably a good example on why it's actually very smart of Team Cherry to not respond to anyone asking about development. And with the experience of the main coder from Team Cherry, Jack Vine, we can expect the code of Silksong won't be a big mess like Yandere Simulator was. Another lesson to learn from Yandere Simulator is that it's very important to work with other people, to have multiple pairs of eyes on your project. Yandere Dev refused any help from more experienced coders and opted to take weird routes like spaghetti code and stealing assets from Unity. And as far as we know, Team Cherry has a level of standard for themselves. Even though they don't work together or have a partnership with another company, they still have a playtester and in general just multiple people to look at the game before releasing it. And they sure as hell don't have a sex doll that they bought with Patreon money. Okay, so I've talked about 2 indie games that were in development hell in their own way, and I've compared them a bit to Silksong, but let's get more into Silksong itself, shall we? Considering it's the topic of this whole video. Is Silksong really in development hell? I mean, yeah, it has been in development for a long time, but just because something is in development for a long time does not mean it will be a big mess upon releasing. Games like Breath of the Wild and Red Dead Redemption 2 both took a long time to make, and these 2 did really well and turned out great. I think that most games that do get into development hell are owned by bigger companies and will get issues like technology problems or creative differences. Also because bigger companies want to target the game towards a bigger audience. So maybe changes in the market could have impacts on games owned by companies that want to earn a big buck. The changing market could make a game company want to push out the game quick enough for it to be relevant, which leads to the game having a bunch of bugs because it's rushed. Or the changing market makes it so they have to change or scrap the game's story altogether. However, with indie games, it's usually issues with their public image, like Yandere Dev. But another big issue for indie devs is that they keep adding more and more to the game, which leads to the release date being pushed back, like with OMORI and Silksong. It's harder to keep up with these new ideas being added when you're a small indie team, and especially if you've been working on your own. Furthermore, development hell also could mean the game gets passed through multiple developers, like a hot potato potato, each studio not wanting to clean up the mess it's made. But this has not happened at all with Hollow Knight Silksong yet. Team Cherry is and will be the only developers touching this game. I mean, they are pretty secretive about what they do. You know, they're even being secretive about the lore with their playtester. And the tweet that announced that Silksong got delayed pointed out that yes, a lot of extra stuff is being added that originally was not intended, but they are taking their time to make it the best game it can be. It's not delayed because there's spaghetti code, because of controversies, or because of lack of funding. No, it's being delayed because the developers care about their passion project and want it to be a genuinely good game, especially because of all the hype it's gathered up. Now, if Silksong actually ends up being a good game is something we can't know for sure yet. I mean, the demo looked awesome and the trailers look incredible, but it's not out yet, let's remember that. It is still hard to know if there are in fact more problems with the development of the game than just the size of the game and the quality of the game. I mean, Team Cherry is very secretive about development, so speculation is of course very hard. Another reason, which honestly isn't really talked about anymore, is the Unity issues. You know, how there will be an install fee if the game is over 200,000 downloads. Jack Fine did like a tweet addressing the delay and a joke about how the reason for it was the new Unity changes. So that could also be a reason. Some critiques people have given is that the vision of the project is all over the place and that Team Cherry knew that the game was going to be delayed but it waited too long to announce it. And I get where people are coming from with that argument, especially with the idea that Team Cherry knew that the game was going to take longer than expected but waited too long to tell the community. But I think most people are just scared of the game being put together with flex tape and it being rushed. And I think Team Cherry knows that, you know, but you can't have the game be out super quickly without it having bugs. The whole reason it's being delayed is because Team Cherry doesn't want it to be choppy or bad. They're literally doing what the people want, yet people are still complaining. But whenever a game is delayed, I want people to think of this famous quote from Miyamoto to help us get through these tough times. Often I'll see advertisements for porn games and they say, try not to come. But when you play the game, it seems like the object is to come. So yes, I would call that bad game design. So, the main question is of course, is Silksong in development hell? The answer is, well, we don't know. But personally, I'm leaning towards a no, it's not. Although the community would love some more updates on how development is going, but this is just hard, considering Team Cherry doesn't want to spoil anything more about the game, and I don't think waiting longer for Silksong is a bad thing. I mean, it sucks to have to wait longer, but if it means the quality of the game will get better, and we get some more lore to speculate on, then I don't mind that much at all. Let them cook. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. Please give some of your opinions in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video somehow, then I would appreciate you subscribing. Thank you!